Ultamize. When I say conversation energy, I'm not talking about being loud. I'm not talking about being animated. I'm not talking about being the most extroverted person in the room. You probably met someone who talks a lot, uses big gestures, has a lot of enthusiasm, and somehow still drains the room. That's not high energy. It's exhausting. Now think of the opposite. You meet someone who isn't particularly loud. They're not trying to dominate the conversation. But when you talk to them, you feel something. You feel like they're actually there. You feel like they're listening. You feel like the conversation is moving somewhere. And afterward, you think, that was a really good conversation. That's conversation energy. It's not about volume, it's about how the interaction feels to the other person. Let me show you the difference in a very simple situation. You're at a small gathering. You meet someone new. You say, "Nice to meet you." And they respond, "Nice to meet you too." Then there's a pause. Now, watch what happens next. Person one says, "So, what do you do?" You've heard that question 1,000 times. It's not wrong, but it immediately shifts the conversation into something kind of formal, predictable, and usually not very interesting. Most people answer with something like, "I'm an accountant, I'm in software, I work in healthcare." And now you're in a conversation that feels like a business networking event. Now, imagine a different version. Same setting, same moment, but instead of asking what they do for a living, you say, "What do you like to do for fun when you're not working?" Now, this one happens. People sit up a little straighter. Their faces change. They start thinking about something they actually enjoy. Instead of saying, "I'm a tax attorney," they might say, "I've really gotten into pickleball lately." Or, "I just got back from a whitewater rafting trip." Or, "I'm trying to learn how to cook something other than the same three meals." Now you have something to work with. Now the conversation has life. And here's what's interesting: you didn't suddenly become more charismatic, you didn't say anything clever or witty. You simply changed the direction of the conversation. That's conversation energy. It's the difference between asking predictable questions versus engaging ones, talking too long versus stopping early, waiting to speak versus actually listening, focusing on yourself versus focusing on them. It's a series of small decisions. This completely changes how the conversation feels. Here's another example. You're talking to someone and they're explaining something. As they speak, you nod occasionally. You maintain eye contact. You ask a short follow up question about what they just said, not a new topic, not something about you, something about them. Now, compare that to what most people do. They listen just enough to find a moment to jump in. They break eye contact. They look around the room. They check their cell phone. They interrupt with something related to their own experience. Those behaviors don't just reduce engagement, they signal something very clearly. This conversation is not that important to me. Let's get back to me. And people feel that immediately. Conversation energy is not something you declare, it's something people experience from you. It's built from your timing, your attention, your restraint, your curiosity. And the key idea I want you to start thinking about is this: you don't need to become more interesting. You don't need to make the conversation feel better. You don't have to suddenly travel to 190 countries. Because when the conversation feels better, people assume you're interesting, even if you didn't say much at all. But I do want to stress, I don't want anyone you're talking with to feel like you just interviewed them and all you're doing is asking questions. There has to be a give and take. But ideally, you allow them to give you more than you're putting out back. You're letting them talk a little more.